Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, March the 22nd, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm the host of the most, Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast. So that means we do try to watch our language, but at the same time, words do fly, and also there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So, how do we start this? Usually I stick to the U.S. news, basically because, you want the stuff that matters here. You want the stuff that matters in your country, your community, things of that nature. But here at How the Frack We Got Here, we will be remiss if we did not talk about the Black Air Force Nike energy that is going on in France right now. And if anything, it should be used as an example for us in the U.S.
Across Paris tonight, protests against French President Emmanuel Macron. Hours after two no-confidence motions were filed against his government, protesters gathered at the Place de la Concorde, starting a massive bonfire, clashing with police as they cleared the square. On Thursday, the reaction was swift after President Macron and his prime minister forced the unpopular pension reform bill through parliament without a vote. The bill raises the retirement age from 62 to 64 years old, and Macron argues it's essential to prevent the pension system from running out of money.
Now the only solution is to show that the people protest against this law, and this is the only solution we have.
In recent weeks, 8 national strikes interrupting everything from gasoline to transportation to garbage collection.
All across the city, everywhere you look, the consequences of the strikes are obvious. And out here, protesters say every single night, this is their fight for democracy.
And tonight, President Macron facing a backlash that could bring down his government.
All right, Lester, this is what's happening right now on La Place de la Concorde. Police are trying to clear the protesters, and protesters say they will stay out on the street until the no confidence vote, which will likely happen on.
Now let's think about this for a second. That's Paris, France. Vive la France! And President Macron over there, if you will, has decided he is pushing through a measure that nobody wanted, that he is pushing the retirement age, the national retirement age in France from 62 to 64. And people sat there and said, no, you ain't. Even so, more to the fact that they are literally protesting. I mean, think about this for a second. They did not just protest and march on the Capitol. Oh no, sanitation, electric, logistics, all of that were on strike. And you got to think, and it kind of reminds me of something that France has always done very well. They've always been good at revolutions. Those people, this isn't the first time France has staged a protest of this size before. But again, people always sit there and say about France, and I said this before, I said this in my social, I actually said this on my Facebook, where I said either France has realized that most of their history is based on revolution, or they watched this scene in A Bug's Life.
There was that ant that stood up to me.
Yeah, but we can forget about him.
Yeah, it was just one ant. One ant.
Yeah, you're right. It's just one ant.
Yeah, boss, they're puny.
Puny? Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant. Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one?
Are you kidding?
Well, how about this?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay?
And that's the crazy part. Yes, that was Disney Pixar's A Bug's Life. But it has, say what you want about those movies. There's a lesson in each of those movies. And even more so that France has realized that, hey, we outnumber them easily 50 to 1. They can't stop all of us. So what has France done? France has sat there and said, Vive la Revolution. And it is going to either make President Macron rethink his retirement policy that he's trying to push through, or we might have a second revolt on our hands. But that's what we should do as a people. And I know a lot of people are going, if the U.S. would do the same. Here's the problem with the U.S. France is united. We are not. And honestly, if you really want to get down to the brass tacks of it all, when has the U.S. ever been united? Sure, we may have common causes, consensus, and things of that nature, but have we ever been united? Think about that for a second. How many times has the retirement age for Social Security been pushed in our country? I mean, they're trying to, again, push it now. Even more so that you literally have MAGA Republicans who want to cut benefits, who want to cut VA benefits, who want to cut childcare services. They want to make all these cuts, but touch nothing of the corporations and the rich. And even more so, they want to push the retirement age up out of the fear that Social Security will be tapped out. And do you see us riding the streets? Do you see our sanitation stopping? Do you see our electrical services no longer working as well as they should? No, because a lot of people out there will probably side with those Republicans, and you'll have those that are against. And that's the thing. As much as we keep saying America's divided, America's always been divided. It's just the fact that, thanks to Trump, he was the makeup remover that showed the true face of America. We are not united unless it's by money. And trust me when I say this, if we ever did get the idea to do what France is doing right now, our government would look a whole lot different. But take it from A Bug's Life. You let one rise up, they all rise up. And that's why I said I just want to take a good look at France, because they've got revolutions down because everybody's in on it, versus the U.S. where it's like, you're kind of on your own. But I digress. Moving right along, speaking of things that nobody's going to like, President Biden has decided that he's going to use his veto. Although I wish he could use his veto in other places, but hey, I guess better late than never.
President Biden is crossing one item off his presidential bucket list, using his veto power for the first time yesterday. The president rejected a bipartisan measure that would nullify a new administration rule for retirement plans. He posted a video on social media about his decision.
I just signed this veto because the legislation passed by the Congress would put at risk the retirement savings of individuals across the country. They couldn't take into consideration investments that wouldn't be impacted by climate, impacted by overpaying executives, and that's why I decided to veto it.
CNBC reporter Brandon Gomez joins us now to break it all down. Brandon, good morning. So this measure really centers on the issue of socially conscious investments, something Biden's opponents called woke capitalism. What exactly should we know about what was initially proposed?
That's right, Zinkley. So, putting that definition in terms, right, woke capitalism, what it really is, it's a set of standards that just socially conscious investors use to make sure their money aligns with certain values, right? So what was being proposed? It was a ban on federal managers of retirement plans from considering certain factors when making investments, factors like climate change, right? Considering if a company is overpaying executives, situations where there's an outstanding legal battle at the company, right? And so why veto? Biden said that these have material impact on the business bottom line, as you heard in that soundbite there. These are factors that should be considered by investors when they're considering where to put their money in terms of long-term return on their investments.
Brandon, many were expecting the president to battle with Republican lawmakers on different issues, government spending and the nation's debt limit. So why did President Biden use his first veto on this particular measure, and what are Republicans saying about it?
I mean, it's true. And those issues aren't off the table, right? We still may see those issues come up further down the line. I think this is an issue that you're going to hear a lot about, especially on the 2024 campaign trail if Florida Governor Ron DeSantis puts his hat in the bid, right? So he's been very vocal on this conversation about socially conscious investing. Really, the thesis of the conversation there is that business impact is not materially measured, right? So there's no real way to measure how a company performs based on these metrics. Now, here at CNBC with our partners at Just Capital, we actually turned to the data, right, and saw that companies that prioritize certain issues that we're talking about here, right, diversity in the workforce, these issues do matter, and they do actually outperform their peers.
And Brandon, what's next with the measure for those who maybe forget their political or government classes from high school? Is it dead in the water after this veto, or is there another route to getting it passed?
Yeah, so there would need to be a 2/3 majority in each chamber of the Congress to overturn as well. You can also see it on the state level, right? So in states like Florida, they can individually decide whether or not they want to ban these types of investments. I think really this is, again, going to be a conversation moving forward, but one that we need to sort of keep track of as we continue to head towards 2024 and lead with the data, right? Not just the opinion.
Which you would think so. But long and short of that, guys, it's basically saying we don't want another Silicon Valley Bank issue. What it means by socially conscious investments, they mean that, of course, if you're listening to the Fox News MAGA Republican side, we don't want those companies or banks to have woke agendas. They're treating woke like the new, it's almost like the new Antifa word if you think about it. And again, it's sad that we had to do a veto on this. Now, the reason why is because you have MAGA Republicans who, again, this came from the House, mind you. The Republican-controlled House pushed this through. And, of course, it somehow, and I do mean somehow, got passed by Congress through means beyond my capability, because it was 50-46 that was voted on. So the funny part about this is that they think that this is going to be helpful. This is why that's why I mentioned Silicon Valley Bank as far as, it collapsing. It collapsed because it played with house money and thought that they could, thought they could replenish what they lost. They couldn't. Here's why here's why the MAGA Republicans were like, well, we still want to push this through. No, you really shouldn't, because of the danger of how much this could backlash. And we've seen it happen in one bank. And this is from banks that were bailed out. Banks that were bailed out by Congress, including Wall Street, always seem to be playing with house money. But I've said this before, and I'll say this again. It's the reason why we had the Glass-Steagall Act, and they dismantled it. It's the reason why we had the Dodd-Frank Act, and they decided to take pieces from it. If you don't put parameters or actual borders between larger banks and smaller banks, you will basically see a collapse of the financial sector all over again. So I don't blame Biden for this. This makes sense, although this was basically a worthless tactic by Republicans, but we'll get into that a little bit later, because technically Republicans have a lot on their hands. Because the funny thing about Republicans, that for some odd reason, they believe indoctrination when it has nothing to do with Christianity. But when it has everything to do with Christianity, they cannot see their own indoctrination. Don't believe me? Drag queen shows. I know, weird segue, right? But at the same time, watch this video. Makes a whole lot of sense.
President of the Hispanic Student Association and Drag Show Planning Committee member says they've been planning this event for months and don't understand why Wendler sent out the letter last minute.
Really disheartening to know that he kind of bases his email his argument against drag as a kind of a threat against womanhood, and he links it towards blackface.
Throughout the email, Wendler continuously references beliefs in Christianity.
LGBT is a state institution, so I think the protesters were mentioned as well. I sort of agree with the separation between church and state. Protesters against, right over there, a lot of what they're saying is, suppressing other people's free speech, but boosting themselves. So I think it's all very backward.
Some students who express having similar Christian values say it was the right decision to cancel the show.
Myself, I live in the Word, and it says that in Leviticus that they will not enter the kingdom of heaven if they continue their ways. And I feel bad for them because I want them to be with me as I enter into heaven. They're my brothers and sisters, and they are not doing well. They are going to die.
According to the university's diversity and inclusion website, they aim to enhance the university experience for all students.
WT is real big on supporting like the LGBTQ community. So I feel like with President Wendler taking down the show, it kind of hurts some students.
Those in favor of the protest and show felt it could be a learning experience.
It's like it could help people like understand it, and even if they don't like it, in a way still respect it and still be educated to teach people.
Other students thought it was distracting and embarrassing.
I don't think a school should be doing that, should be allowing it. But I mean, it's whatever they think. I know a lot of people like me really think it's stupid that they're doing this, and it's kind of a joke to us. And so, I mean, a lot of us should see that as people are embarrassing the campus as a whole.
Students against the show emphasized that it wasn't their place to judge, but still believe the show was morally wrong.
For the Christian community, of course, we want to share love. We don't hate anybody. I think that Jesus Christ is the answer. I'm not trying to say that I'm better than anyone or vice versa, but I think that if he were to allow this to go on, we would see our society kind of become like degenerates almost.
Oh, I'm sorry. That last part was funny to me. I'll say it once and I'll say it again. You show me indoctrination, I'll show you Christianity. But yes, that was the West Texas A&M University, where the president had sat there and claimed that the organized drag queen show was discrimination against women, that it was related to blackface. And I'm like, wait a second. Two problems there. I've never seen a drag queen show discriminate against women. If anything, it uplifts them. Number two, blackface? No, because only idiots put blackface. You can be a drag queen and be intelligent, be entertaining, be beautiful, all of those things. You can be. But you're an idiot if you do blackface. There is no coming back from that. But what I find interesting is not only the lack of just sheer idiocy. It's the fact that you're trying to hide your hatred behind your religion. Oh, I don't hate these people. God hates these people. Oh, I'm a Christian. We love everybody, but but they're so sick in the head. And it's so interesting that when it comes to indoctrination, it only applies to those who are not Christians, because Christians don't see themselves indoctrinated. They see themselves as morally superior and educated, but they play the victim when you point it out. That's why you saw those last two guys. Oh, well, Christ loves everybody. Yeah, you kind of missed that part a little bit. Not to go too religious on people, but let's be honest. If Jesus came back and saw the modern day Christian, he'll be like, no. But then again, he'd be black and he'd be from the Middle East. But keep your white rice cake, Jesus, if you want to. It makes you feel better about yourself. But no, it is crazy the level of the war on anything. It is a war on LGBTQ+. It is a war on people who are different than the cookie cutter, Rice Krispie cake warrior, would-be Christian hypocrites out there. Really and truly it is. The simple fact of the matter is just that these people just want to live their lives unbothered. And for some odd reason, those of a certain faith feel like they have to be warriors and defend morality and things of that nature. And they'll sit there and swear, well, it's because of my Christian nature. Do you understand how Christian nature and nationality and patriotism, well, actually nationalism, Christianity and nationalism go a little bit hand in hand? Because it's a cult. Because it's indoctrination. Because when they look at it, they have to hold on to this. Why? Upbringing, been in the church all their lives, accepted everything as it was, become robotic. That's indoctrination. It's the reason why I can't stand religious schools, because anytime I see religious schools, I'm immediately thinking you're just indoctrinating kids. And these are the same people that will see Muslims and other religions out there and say they're indoctrinating kids. These are the same people that will see LGBTQ plus people who are just simply reading to kids and will swear up and down they're trying to turn them gay. That right there is the cult that pretty much doesn't follow a lick of a Bible that's been remixed so many times that he may have a credit on it. But again, I digress. For the simple fact of the matter is, just take my home state of Tennessee, for example. My home state of Tennessee, progressively backwards, just got through passing a bill that effectively banned drag queen shows. They said, quote unquote, that you cannot perform in adult explicit entertainment where children are present. Adult explicit entertainment and drag queen shows are effectively banned by this. I pointed this out in many other podcasts. If that's the case, you could apply the same law to Hooters or Twin Peaks. Because if you've ever been to Hooters or Twin Peaks, guess what? There's something about the waitress attire that's around kids, and yet somehow those restaurants remain unscathed. Oh, show me the hypocrisy. But again, this is coming from the fact that you have Republicans who have been caught dressing in drag. They'll swear now it was high school. Oh, it was a play. It was this. This is why I sit there and say this, that I think all Republicans who vote against LGBTQ issues are secretly closet members themselves. Correct me if I'm wrong. Happens to every Republican that comes out and takes a hard stance against LGBTQ plus people. That when it comes out, either they had a gay lover, had a affair, or my personal favorite, somehow got a love child out the bunch. It's always or the triple trifecta, all three. It's always been that. But even more so, the level of sheer ignorance when religion is put into something is astounding, especially in the case of the matter is that we are telling our kids that you're supposed to accept everybody and love everybody, no matter who they are, where they're from, and all the above. But they have to be Christian. How is that not indoctrination? But speaking of indoctrination, let's get to Florida for a second. Why Florida? Because, guys, you got to remember, in Florida, Governor DeSantis, has, well, single-handedly done a lot of things I did not think he could do as a governor. He has literally put forth a bill, the Don't Say Gay law, that's apparently now law, to where teachers from, K through 6 cannot discuss same-sex or LGBTQ issues. He has effectively taken down African-American AP history to the point to where educators who have more sense and education subject than Dictator DeSantis does has to go back and revise things. Even more so, removing Rosa Parks from the history books. Yes, I cannot make that up. They remove Rosa Parks from the history books. No mention of slavery in the history books. And that's just Florida, the current king of the whole My Beer championships. Well, there's something else that they put forward. And if you thought education, if you thought LGBTQ issues, African-American history was a problem in Florida, no longer, because a Republican's bill, I cannot again make this up, that there is a bill that restricts instruction about human sexuality and other topics from grades 6 to 12. It says, and the sponsor, which is that gentleman right there, said discussions about menstrual cycles would be included even though girls can start having their periods before then. That man right there, Stan McClain, did sit there, and this is the bill that he sponsored. That, think about this for a second, that you cannot talk about human sexuality and other topics from grades 6 to 12. Possibly the point to where you start having young adolescents, to the point to where teachers and certain sexual education classes can't talk about a period? Are you freaking kidding? And he said, it's like, here's the thing that kills me, is that one of the representatives, a Democrat, Ashley Grant, quote unquote, said this. So if little girls experience their menstrual cycle in 5th grade or 4th grade, will that prohibit conversations from them since they are in the grade lower than 6th grade? He goes, And McClain, the guy I showed just now, said it would. And it cleared the then keep in mind, this is Florida, so GOP country, passed 13-5. It also says it would allow parents to object to books and other materials that their children are exposed to require schools to teach that a person's sexual identity is determined biologically at birth, and set up more scrutiny. More scrutiny. Like I said, this is the crazy part. You thought The Handmaid's Tale was a show? No, it is a roadmap in Florida right now. I feel bad. Who I feel bad for? I feel bad for anybody that's LGBTQ in Florida. I feel bad for anybody who's Black in Florida. And most importantly, I feel bad for any woman, young woman, little girl in Florida right now in the educational system, because a lot of people think this is a great idea. And I, above all else, cannot tell you how bad, how dangerous of an idea this is, because there are some people out there who think that they know better than teachers. Now, a lot of parents, especially during this pandemic where you had remote learning, a lot of parents had some newfound respect for teachers and what they go through when you have to teach your child at home. But you have some parents out there, they'll be like, I don't want my child reading Harry Potter. That's witchcraft. I don't want my child reading about Twilight. It's about vampires and Satanism. No, it's not. But enough voices get together, enough people get in certain areas, they can change things to make a life a living hell for everyone else. And that's the problem. You thought Florida, I think Florida is just an example. Other states are doing this too, even more so. The next one I'm going to get into, where again, this is why I say the real war is on education, because more red states are going to help pay for all K-12 students to go to private schools. Now, you might think that's a wonderful idea, that all K-12 students to go to private schools. What they don't tell you is how they're paying for it. Because keep in mind, if you haven't heard, you probably heard this term before, school choice. Now, with school choice is the most dumbest concept next to charter schools. Yes, I said it. The reason why I said it is because school choice is what Republicans want to sit there and say is their way of tackling education. You want your child to go somewhere. You want your child to go to school where you need to look at the best education. Guess what? We're going to allow you to do that by giving you school vouchers or giving you options. Send your child, regardless of their zoning, which that's the reason why zones were set up in the first place, to mitigate overcrowding and to send kids in close proximity to their homes to said school. The problem with that is they attacked education. They halved the budget. Teachers' salaries haven't went up in years. You take away more after school programs. You take away vocational things like cheer and vocals and chorus, metalworks, woodworks, automotive, 4-H. You take away all those things, and then you basically put everybody on a basic standardized testing to where the teachers and administration and even the school district gets punished if kids fail. This is all designed to where Republicans can turn around and privatize education. Keep in mind, I said privatize. You know why I say privatize? It's because if you take something bad enough and you put it and you run it through the ground, then that's what Republicans consider and say there's money to be made. And you don't think for 1 second that the educational funding that still goes out to public schools, Republicans are not eyeing. They're trying to figure out how to funnel that money into their donors / schools that they want kids to go to. This is why I sit there and say school choice is a terrible idea, because in order for school choice to actually be effective, those charter and private schools, which by the way get money from the parents who pay tuition and other means, they're going to get state funding, because now they're taking on kids who don't usually fit their caliber. But these same schools are going back to the state and saying, hey, we need assistance with all these kids that you're sending our way. And the state's going to sit there and say, okay, well, we're going to take from this school that's getting all this funding and we're going to give it to you. And what do you have? You honestly have the official death knell of public education as we know it. And yet people wonder why a lot more people are going homeschool. I used to make fun of homeschool people. I used to make fun of homeschool because I used to sit there and say, how is a kid going to be sociologically developed hanging around his siblings and his parents all day when he needs to be around people of his peers and develop social skills and cues that way? I used to make fun of that. And now I'm realizing that at the way public school's going, that might be the only choice you have left if Republicans have it their way. But moving right along, speaking of Republicans, former love, now outcast, I guess you can call him, former failure-in-chief Donald Trump. Yes, we're talking about him because unless you've been under a rock, a lot of stuff has happened in the last 48 hours. He's basically pulled a Nostradamus and said that he might be arrested. Perish the thought.
Morning, though, with new information in the grand jury proceedings here in New York against former President Donald Trump.
Jurors are weighing whether to indict the former president for his alleged hush money payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Attorney Rob Costello, the final witness in the proceedings, testified yesterday on Trump's behalf. Afterward, he told reporters that he spent most of his time trying to undermine the credibility of the prosecution's key witness, Trump's former attorney, Michael Cohen. Costello previously served as a legal advisor to Cohen, but the two have since had a falling out. Costello had this to say about his former colleague.
I'm the one who decided to do this. A lot of people cautioned me against it because I had nothing to gain. The only thing I'm doing is trying to tell the truth to the grand jurors. If they want to go after Donald Trump and they have solid evidence, so be it. But Michael Cohen is far from solid evidence. This guy, by any prosecutor's standard, and I used to be deputy chief of the criminal division in the Southern District of New York, I wouldn't have touched a guy like Michael Cohen, especially if he's a convicted perjurer.
The grand jury is expected to return on Wednesday, tomorrow, to decide on whether to issue an indictment. We have NBC News legal analyst Danny Savallo standing by to help break down these grand jury proceedings. But first, let's bring in NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. He is got the latest from West Palm Beach, Florida. Vaughn, good morning to you. So Michael Cohen was standing by to rebut Rob Costello's testimony yesterday, but in the end says he wasn't called. So what all do we know about Costello's testimony, and what is Michael Cohen saying about this?
Right. Robert Costello went in front of this grand jury at the behest of the Trump's legal counsel. The grand jury is convened by the district attorney, who brings forward to them evidence and potential witnesses who could help make his case to bring charges against a particular subject, in this case, Donald Trump, but presented them the opportunity, the Trump's legal counsel, to bring somebody forward before the grand jury, that individual, Robert Costello, who, as you just heard, countered Michael Cohen's testimony and questioned whether he embellished allegations against Donald Trump. That leads to Michael Cohen being present in Lower Manhattan yesterday as a potential rebuttal witness to Costello. Lanny Davis, ultimately Michael Cohen's attorney, said that they were there for multiple hours, but were never called back into the room. Take a listen to Michael Cohen himself explain what unfolded yesterday afternoon.
It's a typical Donald J. Trump play out of the playbook. Figure out how you're going to muddy the water as best as you possibly can. Denigrate the person, disparage them. The district attorney has the documentation in order to validate every single statement that I've made.
Michael Cohen is the crucial witness here. He was, of course, the former fixer and lawyer for Donald Trump, who flipped on him several years ago after serving his own prison time. He is the key witness if there were to be criminal proceedings against Donald Trump.
So Trump has been active on social media since this past weekend. Last night, he posted a video that seems to be an attack ad against Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. What can you tell us about his flurry of posts, and what kind of pressure is Bragg facing right now?
Yeah, Alvin Bragg has put out to his office in a memo that they will be undeterred by any of the outside pressure from whether it be Republican politicians or whether it be from the likes of individuals online. You can see in a statement he writing saying, "We will not be intimidated by attempts to undermine the justice process, nor will we let baseless accusations deter us from fairly applying the law." Of course, the pressure is coming from the highest place, and that is Donald Trump himself, who over the last now 3 days has put out a litany of statements on his Truth social media account, as well as a video calling into question the integrity of Alvin Bragg and putting pressure on the prosecutor's office as they considered attempting to bring charges against him.
And Vaughn, do we know how the Secret Service would handle a possible indictment here?
We know per multiple sources to NBC News that the Secret Service would intend to stay with Donald Trump every step of the process, from arraignment to even potential jail time. This is for the Secret Service, this federal agency that is in the position to protect Donald Trump. They suggest that they will be there. And over the course of the next week, if Donald Trump were to be arraigned in New York City, they would try to keep him out of public view the best they can. Of course, Donald Trump often has his own plans. And if he were to request the Secret Service to not be with him, then that would mean something else. But when you see the security measures already being taken around the U.S. Capitol because of potential protests, but also there in New York City, there is, of course, security concerns around the potential arraignment and indictment of Donald Trump.
Yeah, so that was a lot. And yes, Donald Trump did say over the weekend that he predicted that on Tuesday he would be arrested and indicted on charges. Now, of course, who knew that despite his alleged illegal business dealings, despite his compromised position from other countries having him in their pockets, despite all the many times that just maybe he allowed some nefarious intent of things to go through, that the one thing that is going to take him down possibly is a porn star. You couldn't write that book any better if you were literally any author out there. You couldn't write that book any better. The fact that Michael Cohen, his former personal lawyer and fixer, is basically a star's witness with proof. And of course, Trump, again, this is what I say about the former failure in chief. He loves notoriety. His fascination with dictators, the fact that he really thinks he's the chosen one, the fact that he just preys on people's anger. I mean, I could say fragility. I could sit there and say wet dreams of middle-aged men that a man can say and do what he wants with no consequence. I can go down that route, but he tapped into the anger of a lot of those rice cake warriors out there. Even more so that even when he said he was indicted, that you guys should come down and protest, which from my understanding, like 10 people showed up. But again, that was Tuesday. And now we get to Wednesday. And of course, because of all the hoopla, plans changed.
All eyes are on a grand jury that could soon take the historic step of indicting former President Donald Trump. Just last hour, we got word that jurors did not meet today. They were scheduled to do so. Two sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News the Manhattan District Attorney told them to stay home and to be on standby for tomorrow.
It is still unclear exactly when the grand jury could reach a decision. Mr. Trump is under investigation for an alleged hush money payment made to adult film star Stormy Daniels. It happened in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is live outside the Manhattan District Attorney's office. Gabe, good to see you. It is a hustle and bustle of activity. Do we have any idea why the DA decided to tell the grand jury stay home today?
Well, Vicki, at this point, the reason for the delay is unclear. And as you mentioned, two sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News that grand jurors have been told to stay home today. That is a change from what we expected, because previously the grand jury had been meeting on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and they usually did so around 2 p.m. And so we were waiting this afternoon to see whether there could be another witness that could have come and testified before the grand jury, or if this indictment would have gone up for a vote. But again, the late breaking news is, and now we've been told, grand jurors have been told to stay home for the day and are now on standby for tomorrow, Vicki.
Eve, is there any sense in terms of the bigger picture timeline here, whether or not this will have an impact or give us a clue as to when a possible indictment could happen?
or to me, not that much?
Well, still a lot of unanswered questions here. We reached out to the district attorney's office. They are, of course, declining to comment or confirm even that these grand jurors have been asked to stay home. As I spoke with one source with Donald Trump's campaign, they are not releasing a statement at this point. But as you mentioned, this has been, he has been attacking the district attorney over the last several days over his social media platform. But with regards to a timeline here, the big question again is whether there could potentially be another witness called tomorrow. We do not know that at this point. But if it does go to a vote and at least 12 grand jurors vote to indict the former president, then that indictment would be sealed until potentially the prosecutors reach out to Trump's legal team and he's makes arrangement for to come up to New York to be processed, fingerprinted, and then some sort of an arraignment. A lot of questions surrounding that, of course, because this being a former president would obviously require Secret Service protection. So at this point, Vicky, the bottom line is that the timeline for all this, and if a potential indictment is handed down, and that of course is still a big if, the timeline for all this remains very much up in the air. But we are expecting tomorrow to at least find out whether the grand jurors meet once again and how.
Crazy, isn't it? That we're now on Wednesday, and of course, they sat there and told them, hey, potential jurors, just stay home for right now. Because let's also be honest, Trump is going to make a spectacle of this. He wants to do the entire perp walk. He wants to see he thinks his legion of fans are going to be there, free Donald Trump and all that stuff. Sounds like a really bad mixtape CD if you think about it. But I get it. Because Trump is despite Trump being the con man that he is, he's still a big fish. And if you're a big fish, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to make sure that you have the right bait to pull him in, to reel him in, to have them on the hook to where it is above reproach. Now, Trump being that, because again, think about the stall tactics that he did when he was president. The fact that they couldn't, to this day, his taxes did get released. 4 years later, his taxes got released. And even when they got released, now you still have multiple lawsuits. Keep in mind, if you're a Trump attorney, it's Christmas for you right now, the bill of hours you're putting in, because of all the many lawsuits he is facing on different fronts. It is astounding that a person this level, I haven't seen a person this level since Capone to not really be arrested. But again, we will follow as it comes along. But you know what's so funny? Despite the love-hate relationship that former failure-in-chief Donald Trump and current dictator Governor Ron DeSantis, the love is still there.
Ali, let's talk about DeSantis because House Republicans right now are in Trump and DeSantis' home state. Up until now, DeSantis has been pretty mum about this, but he held a news conference. What did he say?
Yeah, Lindsay, just in the last few minutes, we're getting Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' reaction to this potential for an indictment and the way that Trump is talking about it. I'll let him speak for himself here. Listen to what we just got in.
I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that if you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda.
So again, Lindsay, we're watching the first reaction that we've seen from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. And this plays in a lot of different ways for DeSantis as someone who has tried to stick close to former President Trump because it was Trump's endorsement in 2018 that really launched him into the national conservative consciousness. That's something that he's hoping to parlay in any kind of potential presidential bid. He hasn't announced yet officially, of course, but he has been making the stops to places like Iowa and Nevada. He's clearly one of the people who's in this conversation regularly particularly at the top of the polls. But the fact that DeSantis, while other members of the Republican Party were coming out with this line immediately that there's a two-tiered system of justice in this country, as they say, that they were coming out with that, but DeSantis was mum. That was something that people in Trump world noticed. You saw people like the former president's son, Don Jr., saying, pay attention to who was coming to Trump's defense. The fact that DeSantis needed 24 hours to get to this response, I think, is something that people in Trump world have noticed and are going to try to exploit going forward.
Secret lovers, that's what they are. And you look, correct me if I'm wrong, Governor, it's like dictator DeSantis. Well, I just think the prosecutor should do better about chasing crime than going after an old man who paid a porn star. It's almost like they have this love. It's a toxic relationship. You know what it is? Governor DeSantis and Donald Trump have a baby boy relationship. If you've seen Baby Boy, terrible movie about toxicity in all its forms. It's those two. Because again, it's this whole thing of just, well, we're just trying to make sure that everything's fair and that, you know, there's two tiers of justice in this world. I'm like, wait a second. You rice cake, tater salad community, you're on the right side of that two-tiered system that you love so much. Because this is the setup, guys. This is why I stand and say this is the setup. This is where they try to make it seem like everything's going against Trump. You have those that will support him, those that will be quiet, and those are going to be looking at the presidential election going, don't know if I should really say anything about him. That's what they do. It's not surprising at all. But again, Governor DeSantis, Dictator DeSantis is still going to put his hat in the ring. Why? Because he could probably ride that MAGA train all the way to his presidential election that pretty soon he may be announcing. Because let's be honest, you keep testing the waters long enough, and of course, he's got a chokehold on Florida. Why not go for the rest of the country? You may have enough crazy people to actually back you up on that. But speaking of crazy, the Federal Reserve, still trying to tackle the inflation monster, may decide on another interest rate hike.
Managing Director ahead of U.S. Bank Strategy for RBC Capital Markets joins me now with more on this. Gerard, thank you for coming on. You know, inflation is still more than triple the Fed's target of 2%, but higher rate hikes could further destabilize the banking industry. So how does the Fed weigh these two factors? What's at stake here?
It's a great question, Diane, because they're really stuck between the proverbial rock and a hard place. And inflation is one of the key metrics that they have to control. As you pointed out, it's over 3x what they want it to be. So I think that's going to be the dominant headline, because though we've had this financial instability with the banks that you referenced, it's starting to calm down from what it was like 2 weeks ago. And so I think that when they look at what the trends are in deposits, they actually will raise rates because inflation is much higher than it should be.
Gerard, you say you think the risk of a bank run is over now. What makes you so confident, and can the industry sustain another rate hike?
The reason we're confident that the bank run is over is that it was really focused in 2 or 3 banks, as you're probably familiar with: Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic. And when you look at the Federal Reserve's discount window, which is where the banks go to borrow as a lend, the Fed is the lender of last resort, you could see that all the lending or borrowing at the window took place in San Francisco and New York, where these companies are located. There was no contagion. St. Louis and Cleveland and Atlanta, we didn't see anything unusual there. The big banks are telling us, the big regionals and the money centers, that there's no outflow of deposits of any magnitude. So I do think the banks could handle the 25 basis point increase. And I do think that those banks that had the runs were so far outliers than your normal bank.
Now, when it comes to the economic picture overall, there are a number of mixed factors at play between the job market, inflation, recession fears, banking instability. How do you see this all playing out long term?
Diana, it's a really good question, because the cross currents in data today are incredible. And the employment market, to your point, is very strong. On the other hand, you look at some of the other metrics that you referenced, and they're pointing to slow down or a recession. So it's really challenging. I think what's going to happen is they have to get this inflation under control. Once it's under control and heading toward 2 to 3%, possibly by the end of this year, next year, they can start cutting rates. But it's a little too early for that to happen.
All right, Gerard Cass.
Now, the funny thing about this is later on that the Federal Reserve did decide to hike it up by half a point. And the thing about hiking up half a point, it's supposed to slow down inflation. Well, they've been hiking up this long and inflation still hasn't dropped to acceptable levels. But again, this is the part where I have an issue with it, to where, again, the easiest way to solve the problem, because the one thing about our society, I guess, or our financial system, it is based on the fact that the lower pay more, the lower are consumers, right? Middle and lower classes are consumers, where the top earners, yeah, they pay a greater share of it, but they're rich. They don't become middle class by paying their shares. Somewhere in the middle of this, again, with this pandemic, we've seen shortages happen. Companies make buku bucks, but they don't get tax windfall profits. We have seen gas companies rake in profits, no windfall profits tax. We've seen baby formula. We've seen produce, eggs, things of that nature. All of that go up. Companies making record profits, but they're not paying anything more in taxes. Meanwhile, wages have been stagnant. See, that's the key part, is that it is amazing this should have been noticed back in 2001. Really should have. Why? Because the minimum wage hasn't changed since 2009. $7.35. That's the minimum wage in the US in 2023, where most jobs like McDonald's or the fast food places will say, well, you can get $15 an hour. $15 an hour is poverty wages. It is. And while things are going up, the cost of living is going up, rent is astronomically high. Forget car payments, insurance payments, forget childcare, forget groceries, forget utilities, forget all those things that you actually need are necessities to survive in life. But when it comes down to it, your pay is stretched to the point to where pennies are screaming. But it's an easy way to solve it. Increase the pay. Well, how do you do that, Will? Increase the minimum wage. If you increase the minimum wage to anywhere between $26 to $27 an hour, which is basically going with the rate of productivity, the GDP of this country, that the minimum wage should be somewhere between $26 to $28 an hour. If you did that, increased wages across the board would skyrocket. But companies cannot afford to pay that. Well, companies can afford to pay you peanuts while they rake in billions. Somewhere along the line, it went horribly wrong. Even more so, that's why you have protests in France, where the retirement age is trying to get knocked up by 2 years. And that country sat there and is ready to burn the place down. It's the reason why we see protests of educators who don't get paid enough to do what they do. And we've seen it all throughout last year, and we're currently seeing it now in another state.
What we're doing is a righteous gesture. This is a righteous strike. This is to support the people who are taking advantage of more than anybody else in this district. This has to stop. And we need to bring these people up to livable wage, livable conditions, and really make our schools the fantastic places that they have the potential to be. Thank you all for coming out here. Thank you all for supporting us.
Well, the district really, has pushed workers to this point of a strike. We were in negotiations for nearly a year, and with no movement from the district. And so, at this point, we will continue with the impasse process and move forward. And, tomorrow with the third day of the strike, and we're letting the district know that, workers are ready to take action now. And because, as you heard from them today, you cannot survive on poverty wages. Those who educate and support our children and create the school environment that they need should not be living in poverty. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, they're exactly right.
In Los Angeles, thousands of teachers are out of.
My bad. So that again was Los Angeles, where kids, but teachers like this right there protesting.
Out of the classroom and on the streets. They're joining 30,000 members of the Service Employees International Union Local 99 on a 3-day strike for higher wages for those union workers. They represent cafeteria workers, bus drivers, custodians, and special ed assistants.
We have had enough.
Mediation talks between the union and the school district were called off yesterday afternoon. Union reps say the district broke a confidentiality agreement, this after a year of failed wage negotiations. The union wants a 30% raise. It says right now the average district support staffer earns $25,000 a year.
Those are poverty wages.
The superintendent for Los Angeles Unified School District accused the union of refusing to negotiate and says he is still open to further talks.
We were never able to be in the same room or at the same table to address these issues.
The 3-day strike forcing the nation's second largest school district to close, leaving more than 500,000 LAUSD students and their families in limbo.
I support my kids, and ultimately I feel that they're probably being left behind.
At least 150 schools out of 1,000 will remain open for meals and childcare, but there will be no classes. The city is trying to help families during this 3-day strike. Mayor Karen Bass announced that dozens of places will be open to provide meals and student supervision.
Now think about that for a second. The average support staff for LA is $25,000 a year. I've said this before about educators. Educators don't get paid enough. They do not. You can look at every school, you can look at every district in every city, in every state, and you'll come to one foregone conclusion. Educators do not get paid enough. It is simple as that. And what usually happens when you don't pay? You strike. It's the reason why I say union. That's why I say unionize. This is the reason why you have unions. This is the reason why, because the simple put, the Bugs Life theory again. If you have a lot of you, they have to listen to you. They have to, because you outnumber them. But it is amazing that in this day and age, in 2023, when education is so important to the next generation, the reason, they're already under attack for books they can't read, for not identifying how they want to identify, but at the same time, you have teachers who are stuck in overcrowded classrooms, dilapidated budgets, and somehow stuck with raising children that really come from parents that have no home training. And you want to pay these educators peanuts. And yet I always there says, I say this all the time, and they wonder why teachers don't stay in the public school system anymore. Because they go to more lucrative places. And this is a whole thing of where I say education is being attacked, along with LGBTQ rights, along with African American history. Those are the true wars that are going on right now. Not the whole thing with the tartar sauce community. But that's the point I'm making, that, when you strike, because we've seen strikes, we've seen automotive strikes, we've seen industry strikes, we've seen strikes with companies like John Deere, we've seen strikes in hospitals where nurses are not getting paid enough and they've walked out. We have seen across different areas of employment that it comes to one common thread. You're not getting paid enough. And if you're not getting paid enough, yes, it affects you greatly. It really and truly does. But we will follow that strike that's going on in LA at the moment. But again, this is why I say unions matter, because unions actually get more done. The reason why you have 40-hour work week, the reason why you have PTO, the reason why you have child labor laws, unions, because it ain't from corporations. I'll tell you that much. But a few more stories, guys, before we get to our feel good segment. This one I thought was kind of funny, because you guys remember, we were talking about, as you can tell, some schools are trying to remove certain books, preferably those the LGBT plus PB people of color, want their books removed from local libraries. This one was pretty funny, and I got to admit this. Somebody at the Davis School County Library in Salt Lake City, Utah, has requested the Bible be removed from libraries in the Davis School District. And I love how they did this, because it is what basically happens is You can request anonymously to have certain books removed and cite certain reasons. Now, someone sat there and requested that the Bible be removed from school libraries. However, the Quran, the Torah, the Book of Mormon, and the Hindu text Bhagavad Gita have those haven't been reported challenged. Only the Bible. And I think it's funny that because this is following sensitive materials, that they consider the Bible to be one of direct division, to where someone says it's insulting that they want to remove the Bible. But yet, if they wanted to remove the Torah, crickets. Absolute crickets. But it just goes to show you. That's why I sit there and say, when it comes to Christianity, their Christianity and nationalism both have two things, and both of those two things have one thing in common. They are a cult. But again, before we get to our Feel Good News segment, guys, this one unfortunately goes to show you that when it comes to police custody, how they take people down, that really needs to be reviewed, especially in the case of this man who was basically smothered to death.
Between a 28-year-old man and 7 sheriff's deputies. Now, this is a story that we were telling you about last week. The young man, 28 years old, Ivo Tieno, died later on. The deputies, in addition to 3 hospital employees, have since been charged with second-degree murder.
CNN's Brian Todd is in Virginia covering this for us. Brian, this video, we're told, disturbing. What can be learned from it?
John and Erica, what you can see in this video is kind of a dramatic, kind of a slow moving, but very dramatic encounter that he has with these deputies. I can call it an encounter, I guess, because they're pretty much on top of him the entire time. The first video, though, that we see is of him being brought into the intake ward at Central State Hospital. It's a mental health facility in Petersburg, Virginia. This is surveillance video of him being brought into that hospital in the morning, on the afternoon of Monday, March 6th. You can see deputies bringing him in. They're kind of holding him up. He is in shackles and leg irons. He's not necessarily able to support himself. At least it doesn't look like that on the video. They bring him in, then they get him seated basically on the floor by a chair. There's a chair right there, but he's not in the chair. He's on the floor with deputies restraining him at that point. Several minutes pass by, and then they get him on his stomach, on his side first, I believe, then on his stomach on the floor, where they are restraining him for several minutes. According to the prosecutor, Ann Baskerville, they're holding him down for a total of at least 12 minutes. And at various points, there are 7 deputies on him and then allegedly 3 security guards on him. There are different numbers of people on top of him at once, but at one point in this video, you do see all 10 people on top of him, putting pressure on him. And then, at some point he does pass away during this sequence. It's not quite clear the moment he passes away, but in some of the video we've seen, you can clearly see him appearing lifeless in that video. There are also some 911 calls that were placed starting at 4:40 p.m. on that day. And these are hospital employees calling 911, saying that he had been aggressive at one point, but also that he was not breathing. Here's a recording of those 911 calls.
We need an emergency, what do you call this again? An EMS here in Central State Hospital. It's in Petersburg, Virginia. So the patient is a new admission. So we're still in the admission unit. And then he's very aggressive. So,
what building?
Building 39. It's a maximum security unit. So they're doing a CPR right now. And there's no pulse anymore.
Is the patient aggressive or is he not?
He used to be aggressive, right? So they're trying to put him in restraint. Then eventually he's no longer breathing.
Are they doing CPR?
Yes, they do. They're doing right now.
So, and later in those 911 calls, there are other 911 calls that are made by those Central State Hospital employees after that sequence that you just listened to, where they're complaining that the EMTs are not there yet. They were told by the dispatcher that the EMTs were en route. Then they call later on and they complain that they're not there yet. They say it's unacceptable, that that they need to get there. What is not quite clear is whether the 911 calls were placed either before or after Ivo Otieno was deceased. The prosecutor believes that those calls were replaced after he was deceased, but that's not quite clear, at least some of the timelines that we have and some of the video we have, guys. We were just in here for the grand jury swearing in. That they brought one of the defendants up via video and talked to him about his possible arraignment. They swore in the grand jury just a few moments ago, brought in 5 witnesses, and then took them to the grand jury room. So the proceedings here are underway. You've got 7 sheriff's deputies charged with second-degree murder and 3 employees of Central State Hospital charged with second-degree.
So, yeah, again, I have to ask this when it comes to police custody. Number one, when does it take so many people to turn around and subdue one individual? Especially the fact that you have him on his back. And I say this all the time with police custody. You have so many ways of non-lethal takedowns, but putting a subject on his stomach and then sitting on top of him as a restraint doesn't help. So yes, that case is ongoing. Those officers have been charged with second-degree murder, and we're bound to see what happens. But this is what I stand and say about police custody in America, police reform in America. It definitely needs to happen because, again, if you're a person of color, you're wondering whether or not you're going to go home tomorrow, simply put, because if you're told to lie face down on your back, you might not wake up. And that's a scary freaking thought. It truly is. But we're going to go move on to our Feel Good 7, guys, because usually on How the Frack Got Here, we do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom. Sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it is Wednesday, hump day. Tomorrow being that it'll be Friday, early Friday Eve, which is Thursday, we will leave you guys out with some good vibrations. And hopefully this story will do just that, because this is a first on Sesame Street, a black puppeteer, which if you recognize her, you'll remember her seeing her on America's Got Talent as well, because not only is she a great puppeteer, she has incredible talent, and especially for singing. But you'll see what I mean momentarily.
Flipping the script, featuring people on screen, on stage, and behind the scenes, shining a spotlight on diversity. Enter Megan Pifus-Peace. The multi-talented artist made history when she became Sesame Street's first full-time black female puppeteer. She's on a mission to inspire future generations, one puppet at a time. Yourself, what do you say you are? I am
an artist, but I'm also a puppeteer and a ventriloquist.
Do you even have the words to describe what it means to be on Sesame Street?
Living in my childhood imagination. I'm basically walking into my dream of being able to hug Elmo and walk on the steps of the 1-2-3 building.
Megan Pifus-Peace's path to Sesame Street was paved at a young age.
That don't kill me, can only make me stronger.
At her high school graduation, she delivered the valedictorian speech with a little help. And nearly a decade ago, she performed on America's Got Talent. You don't just talk, you sing.
I learned after a couple of years of doing ventriloquism, I was like, hey, if I can talk without moving my lips, I can sing, because the sound is coming from the same place.
It's hard enough to sing Whitney Houston moving your lips. You do it without moving your lips.
Took lots of practice and time in the mirror and alone.
What is it you see in people's faces and people's eyes when you're doing what you do?
Oh, my favorite part of performing is the reactions of the audience. I love watching and seeing the smiles of kids watching the puppet. And I love the moment where I disappeared, where they're so in love with the puppet and the character that they believe they're real. And Megan doesn't exist anymore. This character is living on its own.
You've made history on Sesame Street. You are the first full-time black puppeteer. What does that mean to you?
It means opening the doors for other puppeteers of color to come onto Sesame Street. And I'm hoping that it inspires other girls that look like me to pursue very unique career fields.
What's your best advice to those girls or young women of color who are looking at you right now and saying, I want to do that. I want to be just like you?
Oh, message me. I'll teach you how. Even if, you don't see yourself as a full-time puppeteer, I think learning puppetry helps you learn how to express yourself and helps you show a different side of yourself. By doing puppetry, I've been able to say things I normally wouldn't get away with saying.
Like?
I'm very soft-spoken. I can be loud. I can be brash. And it really helped me open up and express myself.
I'm Gabrielle.
And I am
Talk about your puppet on Sesame Street. What should we know about?
Oh, my puppet on Sesame Street is Gabrielle. She is a beautiful 6-year-old Black girl Muppet, and she lives with her grandparents and her parents. And Gabrielle loves to sing and to dance.
What does Gabrielle bring to Sesame Street?
Gabrielle brings an unwavering sense of self-confidence and love of community. When someone is not let in because of the color of their skin. She brings a lot of life, and she says love a lot. I love. And so she brings lots of love and joy. And I love that she just gets to be a normal 6-year-old girl on the street.
Of course, Gabrielle is not her only puppet.
I am the Reverend Pastor, Bishop, Ambassador, Matthew, Marco, Luca, John, Tita, Tata, Ticka, 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 Tatas.
And like Whitney Houston, the Reverend can belt a tune.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Megan.
I don't care what that is. That's talent. The fact that you are a puppet. Okay, first off, number one, you are a puppeteer. Number two, that you can literally and figuratively do that with no issue. Sing. Y'all ain't hearing me. The fact that you can sing. This, the reason why I point this out, because she was on America's Got Talent and she was singing Whitney Houston. For all those who have never tried to sing a Whitney Houston song, no, it is great difficulty. It is beyond great difficulty. But doing so without moving your lips and sounding clear and concise, that's freaking talent. I don't care what no one says. But definitely wanted to give that young woman the spotlight she so richly deserves. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here. I do always want to especially shout out my brother in arms, my buddy who is usually on the ones and twos, on the wheels of steel, as they used to say back then when radio DJ was a thing. My buddy Vaughn, Big BZA Dot. You can definitely find him at Big BZA Dot on all social media. Definitely check him out, bigbza.gmail.com. Search 3MG Beat Trap on YouTube music channel, as he does beats. And if you are interested in beats, he will sell them to you. But definitely check him out, Big BZA Dot on all social media. Also, as myself, guys, I can be found BlackFox447, also on almost everything social. I usually post reviews on everything that I watch, that I play, that I read, that I see, even gym stuff, because I still believe I gotta be in somewhat of a shape, but I'm gonna get there. I'm definitely gonna get there. At the same time, guys, the link at the bottom will make that just a little bit bigger for you guys to see. If you'll copy and paste that into your browser, it'll take you to the link tree that I have that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit Podcast, of course, your offense podcast. Definitely like them all, share them all, because each of them is different and brings something to the table, but they are all about conversation, and hopefully you guys will have some fun with it as well. And also, let me know what you think of the show. Let me know what you think of everything that we discussed, that we followed. I want to keep the conversation going, because once you get involved with current events, it's hard to turn that off, because you should be more aware of what's going on in the world, not only for your benefit, but for the next generation. Also, with that being said, guys, I always said that I want to start saying this in 2023 until 2024, and I still want to say it beyond there. There is no competition, guys. You have the ability to really put in the work and make something out of yourself, whether it's facing a dream, whether it's a goal, things of that nature. There is no competition but yourself. But I will root for you every step of the way, only because I love to see everybody win, especially my chocolate folks and my seasoned mayo folks. You know who you are. Also, that being said, guys, even though transmission vectors are getting low, please protect yourself, especially if you're traveling, going to high-placed areas with a lot of foot traffic. If it calls for wearing a mask, go ahead and wear a mask. If you're sick, please stay at home. The only way we're going to get down to somewhat of a normal level before COVID-19 raised its ugly head is that we have to follow the rules, is that we have to maintain quarantine, and above all else, protect ourselves. That is our number one goal. Just saying. So, that being said, guys, last thing I'll say about how the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information, allow you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a lot of perspective that goes along with it. we try to be progressive. We try to right the wrongs from our past banking decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first black person to the Supreme Court, electing our first black person to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first black 4-star military general. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go about our paycheck? Why are we electing different politicians but still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves and each other. We will all get through this.